Hi, I'm Francesca Dunn from Freshwater Habitats Trust, and in this video I'm going to spend around 15 minutes or so talking through the background and particularly the survey methods for the Urban Pond Count, which is a citizen science-led survey to find out how the number of ponds in urban areas of England is changing. The reason the survey is important is because ponds are a critical habitat type, particularly for biodiversity. Our own research has shown that, although individually ponds might look small and sometimes pretty insignificant, look at them collectively and they turn out to be massively important. In fact, in most landscapes, ponds are the richest freshwater habitat and have the most rare species. Slightly shockingly, they are usually much more important than larger habitats like rivers and lakes. The problem is that there have now been no surveys of ponds in Britain for 15 years. There have been surveys in the past, particularly undertaken as part of the Countryside Survey run by the Centre for Ecology and Hydrology. Back in 2007, there was an estimated 234,000 ponds in England, and numbers were fortunately going up. But this is 15 years ago now, and we really have no idea what's happening to ponds at the moment. It's important that we do know so that we can feed this information into national policy, and it can be used to inform and change policy instruments like biodiversity net gain and agri-environment schemes to make sure they are working effectively for ponds. And of course, it's that need to understand pond trends that underlies the initiative to develop the Urban Pond Count. So the aim is to have a survey that provides regular, statistically robust data that can tell us if pond numbers in England are going up or down and how much they're changing. It's being undertaken as a partnership between Freshwater Habitats Trust and Natural England, with the help of citizen scientist volunteers like you. And it forms part of the government's Natural Capital and Ecosystem Assessment Programme, which is undoubtedly useful in ensuring that the data will feed into policy. In terms of design, the survey is made up of around 250 1-kilometre survey squares, and they'll be surveyed every 5 years to provide a regular assessment of change. Our project partners, Natural England, are collecting data for ponds in rural areas. The results of both these surveys will enable us to estimate the number of ponds in England. So let's look briefly at the sorts of ponds the survey includes. The definition of a pond we'll be using in this survey is a body of standing water between 1 metre squared up to a maximum of 2 hectares in area. A hectare is equal to a square with 100 metre sides. And the pond should usually hold water for at least 4 months of the year. Ponds are hugely varied. That's one of the lovely things about working on them. So the definition includes many pond types. Not only ponds across a wide size range, but both permanent and seasonal ponds, like the 2 photos on the bottom right, and it includes upland and lowland ponds, clean and many polluted ponds, and both man-made and natural ponds. All Urban Pond Count volunteers need to apply to be a Freshwater Habitats Trust volunteer on Assemble. Once you have registered as a volunteer, we will message you to find out whereabouts you live and work out if there is a 1-kilometre square near you. If you don't live near one of our randomly selected 1-kilometre grid squares, don't worry, we'll have a new batch of 1-kilometre squares next summer, and you will also be able to help us by visiting a pond and completing a priority pond assessment survey. Details about this survey can be found on our website. If there is a suitable 1-kilometre grid square near you, then you will be sent a site pack with details. If you are happy with this, then the square will be assigned to you. You will be able to message me with any questions you might have through Assemble. Just click Talk to Us, or the envelope icon in the top right of the screen. The document hub on Assemble will contain all the information you need. If you are undertaking surveys, please do read the health and safety information and make sure that you've carried out your own risk assessment so you minimise risk to yourself and stay safe when you are out. Once you have been allocated a 1-kilometre square, you will be sent a site pack document. The site pack includes a detailed map of your square highlighting areas where we have reason to believe there is a pond. Any areas of private land where we do not have permission to access will also be highlighted, and any relevant landowner information will be written on the site pack. One of the important things to check before you go out is whether you need to contact the landowners. We'll already have got landowner permission for you to survey your square, but some landowners also like to know when you are actually on site, so ask if you can phone or email them to let them know when you'll be there. You can complete the Urban Pond Count survey out in the field on your phone using the Cartographer app. We will invite you to be a member of the Urban Pond Count project on Cartographer. You will receive an email with a link to sign in. To download the app, search for Cartographer in the App Store on iPhones or Google Play Store if you have an Android phone. The Urban Pond Count project will appear under My Projects when you log in. To complete your survey, click on Surveys, then Add, and navigate to your square using the map. You can search using the grid reference and zoom into your square. So, to undertake the survey, there are three main parts. Visiting each of the numbered ponds on your map to see if they're still there, searching other areas of the 1 kilometre square, where you have permission, to see if any new ponds have been created or if there are older ponds that have been missed from the map. Focus on open public spaces, parkland, commons, new residential areas and areas with existing ponds. And then recording this information either on the project app or on the paper forms and later entering it online. It is hard to estimate how long the survey will take, as it will depend on the terrain and the number of potential ponds to check. If you are checking areas of woodland, this is likely to take longer than checking areas of open parkland. To save time, it is worth thinking about what order you'll do things and where you can park your car, etc. Checking Google Maps and getting a postcode to put in the sat-nav is always helpful. To find your way around your square, you can use the Urban Pond Count app on your phone, where you'll be able to navigate to your 1 kilometre square. You can also use the paper map we provide, and of course you can always supplement this with your own paper or online maps if you have them. Ordnance survey maps have a website and an app. You can also view Ordnance survey maps for free on Bing, although this option is not available on mobile phones. The issue with the map we send you is that it's quite possible it won't be accurate, and that's really why your ground survey is so important. Ordnance survey maps are often wrong, and it's not always easy to tell if a pond is present, even from satellite photos. Woodland and scrub are particularly tricky because the ponds get hidden under trees. If you have wood or scrub in your square, it's usually worth spending more time searching those areas, probably than anywhere else. But there are other situations where the Ordnance Survey just missed ponds. This map has two types of error. 1. Ponds are present and almost certainly long established but not shown on the map. And 2. Ponds which are present but shown as terrestrial habitat on the map. The Ordnance Survey map shows 3 ponds when the true number could be 6 or 8. Hence the essential need to ground truth. The only way is to check on the ground. We want you to be able to spend your survey time as effectively as possible. So before you get your map, we've looked at the Ordnance Survey map and satellite images of your square and identified as many ponds as possible. These ponds are marked with a number on your paper map or a symbol on the project app. Ponds which we have existing records for, usually visible on the OS map, will be marked on the map in the Urban Pond Count app with a blue circle. Other ponds, and these are usually ones identified by us but not currently recorded, will be marked by a grey circle. Selecting a blue circle in the app will bring up a survey form. The grey circles cannot be selected in this way. They are just there to highlight places where we believe there might be a pond and we'd like you to check. If you find that there is a pond at one of these points, then you could add it using the app or record it on the paper form. If there is no pond here, then you don't need to do anything. In most cases, you will arrive at a pond shown on the map and find that the pond is still there. You then simply need to update the record for that pond. If this is a pond marked with a blue circle on the app, simply click on or near the circle to bring up the survey form, then select Existing Pond. If the pond is marked with a grey circle on the app, this means that there is not an existing record, so you will need to add it to the map. We'll come on to that shortly. The only other thing to do at every pond is to check its size. This is information that will eventually be used to see if the proportion of ponds in different size groups is changing. It's usually quick to do because the ponds only need to be placed in one of 5 area categories and will have made an estimate already. So really it's a matter of briefly checking if the outer edge of the pond looks similar to the mapped outline, and if it does, it should be in the right area category. If it looks very different to the map and falls into another size category, then just change it to the correct category. If the pond is not there, mark it as absent and give a reason as best you can. More than one answer can be given if appropriate. If the reason for pond loss is not clear, select unknown. If the pond has been recorded on the map in error, tick the box, feature was not a pond. This may occur because it was a misclassification. For example, the feature was a widened section of ditch. Sometimes it'll be hard or too dangerous to access the pond. If you can still see the pond from a distance, then mark it as present. If access is too difficult, and do put safety first, then select Could not access the pond and add details on the survey app. During your survey, you might discover ponds that don't appear on the map. This might be because a pond has been newly created, or equally it may well just have never been recorded before. If you're using the project app, then you can add the location of the new pond to the map by zooming in and selecting that area. It will automatically provide a grid reference and a pond number and open up a dialog box to provide further details. If you are recording on paper, you add a new number for your pond. So if your square previously had 2 known ponds, your new pond will be pond number 3. You obviously also need to identify where the pond is for when you later enter it online. You can mark up your map in whichever way you want, with a dot or a cross or an outline, but because it's easy to get the exact location wrong, it's important to provide a grid reference too, either using an Ordnance Survey map or even better, a GPS. There are many free GPS phone apps such as OS Locate, although it's important to remember that your grid reference will be for where you're standing rather than for the centre of the pond. If you can, it is useful to have your thoughts about why the pond has been missed before. For example, it may be a new pond, or it might be a seasonal pond which was marked on the OS map as marsh. But if it's not clear, that's fine, just select Reason Not Clear. And finally, because it's a new pond, you need to put it in one of the 5 area categories. Most new ponds will fall into the smaller size categories, because if it's larger, it will have usually been picked up from the satellite images before. So mostly you'll be looking to see if your new pond is between 1 metre squared and 25 metres squared. The little pond shown here is about 25 metres squared, or between 25 metres squared and 400 metres squared. The simplest way to do this in the field is by pacing. Most people's stride is between 0.8 and 1 metre long. And just a final thing to note, when you are measuring the area of a pond, you should be looking at the outer edge of the pond, not the water level when you happen to visit, which is obviously just a transitory thing that can change a lot during the year. If you're unsure where the outer boundary is, it helps to think about it as the pond's high water mark, the level that the water would usually sit at when the pond is full in late winter or spring. And this level is often marked as a break of slope at the pond's edge, and it should also be clear by looking at the vegetation. It'll be where the pond's wetland vegetation transitions to dry ground, and that'll very commonly be marked by a ring of rushes at the outer edge of the pond. One of the things you may come across in your survey is ponds that are either merged or separated compared to the map image, and there's a convention for dealing with this. So if you have a pond on the map that's really 2 ponds, the larger pond retains the original pond number and grid reference, and the smaller pond is added as a new pond and given a new pond number and grid reference. If it's the opposite, and 2 or more ponds are really merged into one, then the largest pond retains the original pond number and the smaller ponds should be recorded as absent. This last section is about distinguishing ponds from other habitat types, which can sometimes be surprisingly tricky. The most usual situation is when you're surveying in summer and trying to decide if something is a temporary pond or just dry ground. And that's quite common because, depending on the weather for that year, between 40 and 60% of all ponds can dry up in summer. If you're surveying in winter, there's sometimes the opposite problem, that after rain, every little hollow can get flooded and you don't know if it's a pond or not. In both cases, the things to look out for in temporary ponds are, firstly, the classic basin shape of a pond, and then particularly the presence of any wetland plants, especially as we've seen in earlier slides, a fringe of rushes around the edge of a basin. And also have a look at the mud. If there is bare mud close to the centre of a depression, it's usually a sign that it's a dry pond. Quite frequently, a dry pond base will show evidence that it recently held water, particularly if there's grazing and you can see poached hoof prints in the mud or in amongst marginal grasses. If you're surveying in winter, you'd also be looking to see if the base of a water-filled depression is soft with accumulated sediments, suggesting water's been standing for quite a long time. Or alternatively, if the ground is quite hard, suggesting it's not an area that's been regularly flooded. If you have a real problem with temporary ponds, and we all sometimes do, just record the issues as notes on your field sheet or app, and it may be that the feature becomes much clearer during future surveys of your square, in years when the weather may be very different. A final few issues that you may come across. You may find lengths of standing water that could either be a short ditch or it could be a long pond. If so, have a look at its length and width. And the rule of thumb is that if it's more than 20 times longer than it is wide, then it's a ditch. If it's shorter and fatter than that, it's a pond. Similarly, sometimes you come across areas of widened streams and ditches, and it's hard to decide if that widened section is just part of the stream or if it's an on-stream pond. And the rule there is that you count it as a pond if the width of the ponded area is more than 15 times the width of the inflow and outflow stream. So, for example, if the stream is 1 meter wide, then the ponded area would need to be at least 15 meters wide for it to be a pond. And last of all, there can sometimes be difficulties distinguishing between ponds and other areas of flooded wet ground like marsh or fens or wet woodland. And the best distinction here is really that, with ponds, you're looking for a deeper basin-shaped depression rather than extensive areas of flatter flooded ground. But to be honest, there are no true boundaries between any wetland habitat, and often it's a fine distinction. And if it is proving tricky, trust your own judgment. Don't worry and note down any problems that you have on your field sheet or app, and they can be picked up in other years. So that's it for this methods presentation. We hope that when you go out, you very much enjoy your pond surveys and find them interesting. If you have any problems at all, just contact us. So from all of us, thanks enormously for contributing to the Urban Pond Count, and good luck with your survey.